broader coalition, and of course, was to fight against the impending pension cuts, privatization of public assets and resources, the theft of even bourgeois democratic rights in the city of Detroit. And now, basically, we just call ourselves a moratorium now coalition. Our slogan during the bankruptcy was cancel the debt, because we felt that the debt to the banks and the financial institutions was illegitimate, that it was based on several factors. In Detroit, we had a huge foreclosure and eviction crisis that developed long before it arose in other cities across the United States. It was quite obvious in 2007 that there was a major crisis, 2006, 2007. One of the attorneys that works with us, Jerry Goldberg, and another one, Vanessa Fluker, people were coming into their offices every day, about a dozen, asking for assistance to save their homes because they had been ensnarled in these predatory loans. Loans that started out at reasonable rates of monthly payments of maybe 5 or 6%, tripled, quadrupled. Someone may start out paying $600 a month. Within a year and a half and 2 years, their house notes went up to $1,800, $2,300, $2,500 a month. It was totally unsustainable. Then, of course, they hired firms like Trot in New Orleans. They came in and essentially evicted people, despite the fact that a lot of the evictions were illegal. Even after the so-called bailout of the banks in 2008, when provisions were put in place for programs to save people's homes, these programs were virtually ignored by the court system who sided with the banks, or the money that was supposed to go to help people stay in their homes and in their communities actually went back to the financial institutions. We have a good example of that right now. In Michigan, there was the hardest hit fund where $500 million was given to Michigan in 2009 to keep people in their homes, to assist distressed homeowners. And here we are 6 years later, and about half the money has been spent. And a lot of the money that has been spent is going to what is known as Detroit Blight Removal Task Force. And it's run by who? None other than Dan Gilbert, who is a multi-billionaire who owns the Cleveland Cavaliers, who owns Quicken Loans Corporation, which is one of the main persons involved, main entities involved in predatory lending. And they've given him like maybe 70 plus buildings in downtown Detroit. He pays virtually no taxes. They take public tax money that should be going to keep schools open, to maintain public services. These funds are being essentially turned over to Illich and Gilbert to do their thing downtown. If you look at the neighborhoods, I mean, this neighborhood now seems to be stabilizing. But if you look at most neighborhoods in the city of Detroit, they are devastated. Some areas have been totally wiped out. Blocks upon blocks of vacant homes, homes that have been razed, businesses that have been abandoned, small businesses, factories, of course, when you're already aware of that, have been abandoned. I mean, this whole process started, of course, in a modern sense, 40 years ago in 1975, when we had a major restructuring of the world economic system. I was in my first year in college in 1975, and all of the colleagues of mine, friends of mine who worked in auto plants were laid off during the summer of 1975. It was just massive plant closings, downsizing, and that has continued essentially for the last 40 years. So it's really amazing that people in the city of Detroit still come out to meetings, still participate in political activity, still have progressive views on what's going on, because so many people have been forced out of the city of Detroit systematically. Between 2000 and 2010, a quarter of the population of the city of Detroit was forced out through predatory lending, job losses, and so forth. 237,000 people according to the census. So Detroit has been a focal point of the really world economic crisis. And the federal government, their response to this whole process has been essentially to say the government can't create jobs, government can't keep people in their houses, and they have to provide incentives for private corporations and banks to, in essence, rebuild the economy. Well, our position is the economy is not being rebuilt. If you have a situation, I want to read in closing this article that I wrote earlier this week entitled Jobless Recovery and Bankruptcy in Detroit. And it was published by Global Research and some other publications internationally. And it's based on a study that was done by Bridges Magazine, showing that residential patterns in Detroit and the availability of employment sheds light on the contradictory claims being made by the corporate media in Detroit, saying that the majority African-American city, we're still over 80% African-Americans in Detroit, and there are many other people from Latin America, Middle East, and so forth, that we're undergoing an economic resurgence. Now, according to this magazine, it says that, quote, hundreds of thousands of city residents, many without access to a car, live in areas where there are fewer than 200 jobs for every 1,000 residents. Just think about that. Fewer than 200 jobs for every 1,000 residents. Neighborhoods that are miles away from where most jobs can be found, both in and outside the city. Nearly 80% of the city residents live over 10 miles from the central business district, one of the highest rates in the country. Okay? Then it says, that's a quote. Then I say, present patterns of de facto segregated housing contributes immensely to the crisis, but cannot explain the problem in its entirety. Racism and hiring practices, as well as substandard educational opportunities, which Lamar will talk about, is a direct result of the virtual outlawing of affirmative action, which has been taking place over the last decade, as well as the disinvestment from schooling and public services. Right around Detroit, there are over 200 schools that have been closed down in the city of Detroit in less than a decade. And most of these buildings are abandoned. They're wide open. Anybody can go in there and strip, poplar, bricks, you name it. And there's no systematic plan to reopen those schools, to turn them into community centers, feeding centers, or anything. We have a corporate imposed mayor, the first white mayor of the city of Detroit in over 40 years. He was elected ostensibly in a write-in campaign. Now, if anybody believes that, well, that's fine. But he was supported by the banks and the corporations to come in and take over the city of Detroit. If you read the Detroit Free Press, Sunday Free Press from last week, from Sunday, they have a front page article on all these great things that Quicken Loans and Dan Gilbert is doing for the city of Detroit. Thursday, we were down in front of Quicken Loans headquarters, passing out leaflets saying that the hardest hit funds, there's over $250 million of it in Lansing right now, should be utilized to pay people's delinquent property taxes. There are tens of thousands of households right now that are facing property tax foreclosure next month. They're supposed to have an auction to auction off people's homes, even homes that people live in. While Wayne County right now is under a consent decree that could possibly lead to emergency management and bankruptcy, the same process that they carried out in the city of Detroit. So from an economic standpoint, the city is not recovering because the so-called development that exists here is largely focused in the downtown area. It's heavily subsidized by the theft of tax dollars. Money, for example, that should be going to the public schools, that should be going to the Detroit Public Library, is captured and turned over to the Downtown Development Authority, the Michigan Economic Development Downtown, and all these entities, quasi-governmental entities, that tax money is actually being turned over to these people to engage in these projects. They're building a new hockey arena, a new entertainment district in what used to be known as the Cass Corridor. Okay? A lot of that money comes from the citizens and residents of the city of Detroit. So this is so outrageous what is going on in Detroit. And the whole narrative is, if you don't support Dan Gilbert, if you don't support Mike Ilitch, then you're a bad person, you're delusional, you don't know what's going on. He has about 11,000 employees downtown now. And I'll just say this in closing. In order to make it appear as if the demographics of the city of Detroit has shifted, they have rerouted the buses now going into downtown. They say it's because of the construction of the train to nowhere, which is known as the M1 rail. It's supposed to take people from downtown to the new center. Who's going to ride it? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Because if it's going to be the same poor, unemployed, homeless people that ride the buses in the city, those people who work for Quicken Loans and for the Village Empire won't want to ride the bus, ride that train, with people like us. Because they are Uber, they ride Uber, they have their own automobiles, so forth. But it's quite interesting that this train to nowhere also is getting money from the county, is getting money from the city. There's been no vote on any of this, no democratic discussion on any of this. The Detroit Public Schools, which tomorrow I'll talk about, has been under emergency management in effect for the last 16 years. I mean, there was a brief period where there was elected control, but most of the people that were on the board were supported by DTE Energy and all these corporations. So there's been no real discussion about this. The people in Michigan voted against the emergency management law in 2012, overwhelmingly voted against it. Snyder and his cohorts in Lansing imposed it anyway, an even worse form of it. Okay? Detroit Water and Sewage Department, which is one of the largest publicly owned water systems in the world,